Welcome everyone. Don't get frightened with my new look. This is actually quarantine look. I will change this after opening our college. Today we will discuss about rent theory, and the broad topic is theory of distribution. Within this theory of distribution, we have to read theory of rent, theory of interest, theory of profit and theory of wages. Today we will discuss about theory of rent. Now we know that to produce any commodity we need four factors of production. These are land, labor, capital and organization. And when these factors are employed in the production process, then these factors are to be paid some amount of remuneration. Now remuneration paid to the land is known as rent. Remuneration paid to the laborer is known as wage. Remuneration paid to the capital is known as interest, and the rest portion goes to the organizer. Now, it is to be noted that land, labor, and capital, these three factors are engaged against any particular contract. That means land may be leased for 1 year, or labor may be employed for 8 hours, or interest, that means machines may be employed in the production process, say by hiring for 1 year. Since all these factors of production are employed according to some specific contract, their earnings are actually known as contractual earning, and the rest portion goes to the organizer as profit. That is why rent, wage and interest, these are called contractual earning, and the profit which is going to the organizer or entrepreneur, this is known as residual earning. Residual earning is slightly different from the contractual earning, because contractual earning might have some specific rate, but this residual earning may not have any definite rate. Now when we turn towards our theory of rent, then we will see that within this theory of rent there are two broad categories of theories. One theory was given by David Ricardo, one of the greatest classical economists, and the other theory is given by modern theorists. Now this modern theorists include even Marshall also, because Marshall has given some modern notion of rent. Now Ricardian theory can also be subdivided into two types of theories. One theory is known as differential rent, and the other one is known as scarcity rent. Now which one is differential rent and which one is scarcity rent, that depends on cause of rent. That is why this particular rent is arising. Depending on that, we can classify or we can identify some rent as differential rent, and some may be identified as scarcity rent. And in modern theory category, rent is generally divided into two types. One is known as economic rent, and the other one is known as quasi rent. Now let us see what Ricardo says about rent. Now this Ricardian theory has been developed around 1809-1810 during the implementation of Corn Law. And according to Ricardo has given a specific definition of rent, and according to Ricardo, he says that rent is that portion of the produce of the art which is paid to the landlord for the use of original and indestructible power of the soil. Now from this definition, we can identify some of the key phrases. For example, there is portion, this rent should be portion of the produce. That means rent comes from the total production, and it is paid to the landlord. That means according to Ricardo, rent can only be given to the landlord, not to any other factors, and this rent is caused due to the original and indestructible power of the soil. Now what is original and indestructible power of the soil? This may be regarded as the original fertility of the land. Now This Ricardian theory of rent is based on some restrictive assumptions. These assumptions are Ricardo has assumed that there is only one factor of production, land, that can earn rent. No other factor of production can earn rent according to Ricardo. He thought that the owner of the land is entitled to obtain rent for the original and indestructible power of the soil. That means soil or land has some original and indestructible power. Original means it is given by nature, or indestructible means it cannot be destroyed by any means. And this land, from the society's point of view, this land has fixed supply. That means elasticity of supply of land is zero, or land is completely inelastic. And this may be true for any particular society or for any particular region, because you know that within any particular region the total land mass is fixed, so we can assume that total availability of land is fixed, and some of the land may be cultivated and some may not be cultivated, but the total amount is fixed. So supply elasticity of land is zero. Now this land is assumed to be free gift of nature. It has no cost of production. That means the producer has do not have to bear any cost to make ready the land to produce something. That is, land is ready and it is given by nature. There is another restrictive assumption. Ricardo has assumed that land has no alternative use. That means land can only be used to produce corn. That means we cannot use that land to build any house, or we cannot use that land for fishing purposes. All these things. Only land can be used to produce corn. Now, since it has no alternative use, that means its opportunity cost is zero. Now, what is opportunity cost? Opportunity cost, or sometimes opportunity cost, is termed as transfer earning. Whatever may be, opportunity cost or transfer earning is the potential or possible earning of any factor of production from alternative use. For example, in modern days, we can assume that if a land, we have some amount of land and we can use that land for production of corn, production of rice, or we can use that land to for the purpose of say fishing. Now, what is transfer earning or opportunity cost of producing rice? Opportunity cost of producing rice, or transfer earning of producing rice, is the amount of earning from fishing that the producer is foregoing for the production of rice. That means when the producer is producing rice, he is foregoing the production of fishing, and if from production, if he instead use that land to produce use that land to for the purpose of fishing, he might have earned 10,000. Then we may say that 10,000 is the opportunity cost of producing rice. Now, in Ricardian sense, since land has no alternative use, then no alternative use means zero cost of production, zero potential earning. So we can say that the opportunity cost or transfer earning of land is zero. It is also assumed that Ricardo has written his theory in the time where capitalist system was the dominant society, and it was assumed by all the economists that capitalist society is the most efficient society. That is why, and capitalist, we know that capitalist society run by the assumption of perfect competition. So Ricardo has assumed that the factor market, both the factor market and the product market, has perfect competition. And lastly, it is assumed that the production is subjected to the law of diminishing return. Now, in your first semester class of microeconomics, you have seen that total product curve in the short run has a specific shape, and that shape was initially the total product curve increases at a increasing rate, and after some point, after that point of inflection, total product increases at a decreasing rate. That means ultimately, when factors are employed more and more, total product will increase, but it will increase at a decreasing rate. And in Ricardian theory of rent, it is also assumed that the production of corn also obeys this particular law, that is law of diminishing return. Now let us see what is the concept of differential rent. Now this concept of differential rent comes from the assumption that land is not homogeneous. That means if within any particular area we have different pieces of land, and each piece may not be same as the other. That means some land is more fertile and some land is less fertile. Now, Ricardo used the classic example of Robinson Crusoe, and he has assumed that suppose there is an island and that island is completely inhabited. That means no one lived within that island. Now, Robinson Crusoe or any other person comes to that particular island, and when any individual comes to that island and want to produce corn, he naturally will choose a particular piece of land which is most fertile. Now suppose this particular person has started producing corn in the most fertile land, and when he produces at this most fertile land, there is no rent. Now as this person is growing corn at that piece of land, some other persons will be encouraged or attracted by his venture, and they will come to the island one by one. And when more and more people are coming, then it will be seen that most fertile land, all the most fertile lands will be cultivated now. Now there remains only few lands which are not most fertile, they may be of second graded land. Now when someone wants to produce at the second graded land, then what happens? In the second graded land, cost of production will increase naturally, since its fertility level is low, so its cost of production will increase. And we know that price of any particular commodity depends on the average cost of production. Now in the second graded lands, average cost of production is more than the first graded land, so price increases. As price increases, producer producing in the first graded land cannot sell his commodity at the lower price because there is perfect competition. So ultimately price increases to the second graded price increases to the average cost of second graded land. Now let us take some example. For example, in the first graded land, average cost is rupees 5. Then price in the market for the corn is rupees 5 per kg. Now when second graded land are brought under cultivation, it has more cost of production, and suppose the average cost of production or average cost is say 7. Now second graded producer of the second graded lands, he cannot sell his corn less than rupees 7 per kg, so he sells his commodity at rupees 7 per kg in the market. So naturally first graded owner of the producer of the first graded land will sell his commodity also at rupees 7, but his cost of production, average cost of production is 5. So for per kg he is now getting a surplus of rupees 2, 7 minus 5, and this surplus has to be given to the owner of the land. Why? Because owner is the owner of any first graded land and he is entitled to get some rent. So in this situation, rent arises for the first time. Now again, if the third graded lands are brought under cultivation, the second graded land and the first graded land will enjoy some amount of rent, and the third graded land will not enjoy any amount of rent at all. The least graded land, that is third graded land, is known as marginal land. And you have to remember one thing, marginal land earns no rent. The lands superior to the marginal lands earn some amount of rent. Now let us turn towards the concept of scarcity rent. In case of scarcity rent, we need not to assume that lands are heterogeneous. We may assume that lands are homogeneous. Now, why scarcity rent arises? Scarcity rent arises due to the excessive demand for corn. As more and more people are coming to that particular island, demand for corn increases. Now we know that if there occurs imbalance between demand and supply, then price of the product increases. So as with the growing population, as demand for corn increases, its price increases, and as its price increases over and above average cost of production, there occurs rent. So this is the concept of scarcity rate. Now, in Ricardian theory, there is another important aspect, that is the relationship between price of the corn and rent. And sometimes a question comes whether price determines rent or rent determines price. Now, you have to remember one thing: in Ricardian sense, price determines rent. Rent does not determine price. Why? Because already I have said that price of any particular product, that is price of corn, is determined according to the average cost of production in the marginal land. Now you know that marginal land does not earn any amount of rent. So within the average cost of production of marginal land, there is no component of rent. So rent does not enter into price. Rather, when price increases due to the extension of cultivation, rent arises. That means rent is due to price, but price is not due to rent. So for the timing, I think this is enough on the topic of Ricardian theory of rent. I hope that you will read the content given to you, and after reading, you may consult me about your doubts. Okay. Thank you all.